one last thing I want to say to the men out there, any man who feels a sense of failure or that they haven't lived up to their own expectations or those outside of them, any man who's been battling with or has battled with addiction or depression or any of these things that drag us down, I strongly encourage you to start with you and to begin with forgiveness. Not always so easy, but without a doubt, I know from my experience, not just me personally, but being in the company of lots of men, that we are all working our ass off to do the right thing. And while we don't always believe that the results live up, it's in the forgiveness and the starting with yourself and the self-acknowledgement.
And I want to go back to what you said in the very beginning, because I know that we're going to get a ton of questions, Chris. Well, how? How do I begin that? One step that you could take today is trying this habit of even just looking yourself in the mirror.
I'm shocked that I'm even saying this, given my initial reaction to the high five habit. But I agree. Start right there. Start in the mirror.
Because if you change the story you're telling yourself about the person you see in the mirror, if you change the actions that you take in how you treat the human being in the mirror, if you change what you're thinking when you look in the eyes of the person in the mirror, that is the beginning of forgiving yourself. Like, you will never forgive yourself if you refuse to look yourself in the eyes with compassion and with forgiveness and with understanding. And one of the reasons why I'm going to keep hammering this, everybody, raise your hand and high five the mirror. Because if you're at a place where you are beating the shit out of yourself and you can't stand yourself for whatever reason, whatever you did, we've all done something, you don't have to change your thoughts. The neurobics and the science of simply making the physical gesture of the high five, Chris, and all of the lifetime of positive programming associated with it, it has a chemical, a neurological, a psychological benefit immediately that is grounded in science. And so the physical act does the work for you, and it starts to plow new neural pathways, and it releases dopamine, all of which will help you do the other work that you need to do to walk down the road of forgiving yourself. But if you got to start by simply looking at yourself in the eyes and seeing somebody who is worthy of forgiving, because you are.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. You could forgive yourself all day long walking down the sidewalk, but that's a futile exercise. The mirror is where it happens, and seeing yourself.
It's one of the reasons why I always sign off the show by telling the person listening that I love you.
I love that about how you sign off. And I know you mean it.
I do mean it, because I just know how many people can't look at themselves in the mirror. Like, it's just so sad. And I know how much self-judgment we all live with, because I've lived with it. I even learned that it's been 15 years today that you really struggled with loving yourself. And it breaks my heart. And it feels good to have somebody tell you that they love you and that you're proud of them. And to some extent, unless you're willing to do the work on yourself, to let love in from yourself, to demonstrate encouragement, support, and love by looking at your eyes in the mirror or high-fiving yourself in the mirror, if you can't do that for yourself, you will never let the love in that is all around you from other people, because you don't believe you're worthy of it, and you're proving it based on your actions. What are you thinking about? Because I can see you getting moved.
Well, I'm always moved by the way that you sign off and tell people I love you. And it ties back to what I was saying earlier, is just my own experience in being in the company of men who don't, they don't feel that. And I guess since a lot of what I've been talking about is directed towards the guys, I would leave you with one last thought. And that is that while you're standing in front of that mirror and you're looking at yourself, you may feel alone, but you are not alone in either the struggle you have with forgiving yourself or the judgments or the failures or whatever that may be. You are not alone.
At a really wild level, there's actually a human being in the mirror who needs you. It's the one person you spend your whole life with. And the moment that you can look them in the eyes and see a human being worth cheering for, you'll realize you aren't alone because you've got yourself. I want to thank you, Chris, and thank you for speaking directly to men, because, everything that you're saying is universal. And I do think it's important, though, for men and boys and people who identify as male, that you hear a male voice saying these things. It is critical that other men realize that your emotional health, your sense of self-esteem, self-awareness, self-love, and going back to the very beginning of what I said at the beginning of this episode today, is that I think we get self-love wrong, Chris, because we think love is a feeling. But the truth is, you only feel loved because of other people's actions. And when it comes to learning to love yourself, you have to start with the actions. Actions that demonstrate love. And when you are able to stand in front of a mirror and look yourself in the eyes, that's an act of love. When you're able to bring compassion and understanding to the person in the mirror, and you see somebody that's trying, and you see somebody that has regrets, and you see somebody who still has an incredible life to live and is worthy of love, that's an act of love. When you raise your hand and high five yourself and the human being in the mirror, that's an act of love. And so I love what you said, because so many of us know and wish that we felt better about ourselves. We wish we would stop beating the shit out of ourselves. We wish that we weren't in our own way. And all the research also shows that the most important habit that has the biggest impact on our lives is being kind to yourself. It's in the actions, everybody. And so I just love that you shared all that. You've talked also about self-care. What does that mean,
Right.
self-care?
Yeah. So self-care is nourishing every part of yourself. So there is the physical part. So it is hard to heal and come home to yourself if you're living out of vending machines and drive-through windows.
Why?
Because your food affects your mood. And there's nothing life-giving in fake food.
Yeah.
So, as I like to say, as your grandmother would say, put some vegetables on that plate, put some greens on that plate. So fruit and vegetables, I like to think of, before I eat something, can I say, I'm eating this because I love myself? Then some things I won't be able to put in my body because I actually want to live. And we have it flipped where we will call those things the treat. I am treating myself by giving myself something that's killing me. So to have to flip it. And of course, in moderation, because when people hear that, they're like, do you mean I can never have, right? So and drinking water instead of all the soda, sleep is a big one. It is hard to come home to yourself when you're exhausted. You know, we are busy, and then all night people are on their phones or, up and can't sleep. And I say, if your idea, and hopefully this is okay to say.
You can say whatever you want.
Yes. If your idea of relaxing before you go to sleep is watching 3 episodes of Law and Order, I would encourage you to think about, why is trauma relaxing to me?
Oh.
That's what it is. I mean, it's harm, crime, violation, attacks, and that's what is going to soothe me into my bedtime.
So what is the answer that a lot of people give you when they do go into therapy about that connection?
It's that it's normal and familiar. Some of us grew up in high stress, so we think calmness is either fake or boring.
Wow.
Right? People mistake peace for boring. And it's like, to come home to yourself, you have to lean into the discomfort because it's going to feel unfamiliar. I was working with a client, an adult woman and her mom, and they had been disconnected because the mother dealt with addiction and didn't raise her, but they are reconnected now and living together. And the adult daughter really wanted her mom to say she loves her. And the mother just said to me, that just seems fake. So she had not grown up with that, had not heard it. To her, it's like something people do on TV. And so I said to her, if you mean it, it's not fake. It just feels like it because you're not used to saying it.
Mm. It is amazing how many people don't tell the people that they love that they love them.
Right.
And it hadn't occurred to me, it's because they never were told that themselves.
Yeah.
And that it might feel forced or not authentic.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that's the importance of us learning each other's love languages, because, her response was the response of probably many of her generation, which was, you had food on the table or you have a roof over your head.
Yes. What more do you want from me?
Right. What more?
Yeah. Why not just like yourself?
Well, that brings me to something. So I want to read to you a question from somebody that listens to the podcast. Okay. Corinne Schillinger. She says, it's great advice, but here's the deal. Everyone says love yourself, accept yourself, validate yourself. These are general terms. No one actually knows what that means. What does loving yourself actually look like? What does that mean in our everyday lives? Please do an episode about what loving, accepting, and validating yourself looks like, feels like. Specific examples. So many people are frustrated and find themselves confused by the advice, love yourself. So what does that mean? And give specific examples of what you do.
It is an incredibly broad term. Just love yourself. So easy to say. But I personally think that loving yourself is different for everybody. Everybody's going to love themselves in a different way. The way I like myself is, I feel like there's always little things. There's always little things about yourself that you can find that you like.
So number one, find something little.
It doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to be big. It
So
could
give us 3 examples of little things you like or love about yourself.
Right now.
Yes.
I haven't looked at a mirror recently, but I think I like my hair right now. Pretty sure I like my hair right now.
Okay.
We'll check the footage later. Let's see here. I'm liking my smile right now. I really like my smile. And I'm also liking like who I am in my friend group right now.
What does that mean? So what do you like about who you are? Give me a specific example.
it's kind of like how I'm acting with my friends and how I'm treating them and how I'm like respecting them and being there for them. I'm enjoying that. I'm liking that about myself.
You're proud of yourself.
I am proud of myself.
Can you give another example that is not about something physical?
About something physical. I'm proud of how I'm doing in school. I'm doing pretty well in school.
And do you know why you're doing well?
Because I'm trying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're proud of yourself for trying.
Yeah, I am. See, it's like those little things. Like when people are like negative, it's also so more broad when they're negative about themselves, and it's like a bigger thing. Like, oh, I don't like the way my stomach looks, or I don't like the way I look,
or I don't like my grades, or I don't like this, and then you don't feel motivated because you're beating yourself down.
Exactly.
And so you find, number one, little teeny
They can
things.
literally be like, I like the color of my eye right now. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be like the world ending, like I look like a god. No, it just has to be like very little.
Yeah, start with, I love the shape or the color of my eyes. I love the sound of my laugh. Find something small. And I'm focusing on simple and small habits because this is not something that happens overnight. Self-acceptance, self-kindness, self-love is a habit you practice. And for it to become second nature, you have to practice it every single day. And so we've already talked about two things that you can do. One is find one small thing that you like about yourself. It could be that you're a great friend, that you have an amazing laugh, that you're a wonderful cook, that you're a terrific son, that you try really hard at work, that you are proud of the way you're working on your boundaries. There is one thing that you need to compliment yourself on every single day. And if you can't think of something, look in that mirror and look at your iris and just compliment the incredible miracle that is that unique pattern and color that is unique to you. Of 8 billion people on this planet, you're the only one with an eyeball that is designed and looks like that. And that is freaking cool. So start with that. The second thing you're going to do is before you go to bed, scan your day and think of one win, just a small win. And the reason why I want you to think of a small win is because you don't realize how much your brain is currently scanning for what's wrong. And I want you to start to create a habit where we're going to retrain and reprogram your mind to look for what's going right. Because there's a whole lot going right in your day that you're not giving yourself credit for. And whether you got out of bed, that's a win. You got dressed, there's a win. You got to work, there's a win. You smiled at a stranger, there's a win. You treated yourself to a coffee today, there's a win. You got outside and looked at the sun, there's a win. I mean, there are so many things you do right and you don't even realize it. And so I want you to start to just interrupt the campaign of negative thoughts with one win before you go to bed. And in just a second, I'm going to share my absolute favorite tool. But I just wanted to take a minute and say, it's hard. You know, Oak sounds really upbeat, and so do I, and we're joking around because we're really good, we have a great relationship, and Oakley doesn't hate himself anymore. And I'm actively working on self-kindness and self-love. But it's hard, right, Oak?
It's definitely hard. It's not going to be easy to love yourself, and it takes time. It's like a muscle. I'd say it's definitely like a muscle. When you work at it and you start off small, like start off with small weight, and then you get bigger, it becomes easier. If you're think you're a very negative person right now, it's probably because it's a very unconscious decision that you're making. But when you start to try and work at it and you work more, it's going to become more unconscious that you are nice about yourself.
So I wanted to hop on real quick and talk about the fact that it's time to start being honest with yourself. And sometimes in life, that's the hardest thing to do. Whether honesty looks like you recognizing that the relationship that you're in right now, that it may in your mind and in your fantasy seem like a good thing, but in reality, based on how you feel, oh gosh, poor guy. My dog, you guys, just got fixed and he's walking around with a cone on. And I thought he was napping, which is why I decided I would come on. And I guess it's time for me to start being honest with myself that having a dog with a cone on his head is probably not the greatest time to do a live stream. But thankfully, I have two amazing colleagues who are loving him up right now. But what I was going to say is that I want to ask you, what does honesty, in terms of you being honest with yourself, look like? And a lot of times, what happens in your life when you're struggling is that your life is no longer aligned with what you value deeply. I was just doing this incredible interview for a podcast episode that's coming out in the next couple of weeks with an associate professor, an acclaimed author by the name of Dr. Luana Marquez. And she was incredible. And we had this huge conversation about avoidance and transitions. And one of the biggest things that I've been reflecting on is how when you're struggling in life or when you're frustrated with the results that you have or you don't have, the reason why you're struggling is your life isn't aligned with your core values anymore. And there are a lot of us that experience tremendous shakeup in our lives over the last couple of years, right? And now we think that we can just kind of squeeze our current life into the way things used to be. But the truth is, you need to be honest with yourself because you've changed. And for me personally, one of the things that changed over the past couple of years is one of my values that came to the forefront was more connection with my family. It was a simplified business model. It was more space and time to do deeper work. I had to be honest with myself that some of the ways that I was living my life and approaching my business and approaching even friendship, even my marriage, it wasn't working anymore because I had been prioritizing my values of impact and ambition and success. And so being honest with yourself, it's not the easiest thing to do because it requires you to go beneath the surface and ask yourself, where is my current life not aligned with my values, how I want to feel, how I want to be spending my time? And you also need to be honest with yourself, and this is a really hard one, about your own needs, your own wants, your own dreams, and your own boundaries, and your basic, like, kind of level of what you'll accept in your life. So, what is it? If you're really taking a look in the mirror and you're thinking about the areas of your life or your work or your business that aren't at the level that you want to be at, or if you think about how you're spending your time, if you had to be brutally honest with yourself about what your values are, is the way you're spending your time and your energy aligned with what you value? Because if it's not, you are going to stay stuck. You are going to stay at the level that you're at. You are going to stay with the same results, but your life will skyrocket to a whole new level of excellence and ease and joy and emotional peace when you look inward and you say, what do I truly value? And what I truly value right now in my life is making a huge impact. It's deep connection. It is peace, emotional peace. It is a more strategic and leveraged focus of my time. It's deeper connection and fun with friends. And so if I'm being honest with myself, and if you're being honest with yourself, I guarantee you the time that you spend day to day and week to week, that it's not aligning with what you actually value. And that's why you're stuck. And that's why you're frustrated. And that's why you never have time to focus on what you in your heart long to be doing. because I'm going to be honest with you. You are capable of doing the work to align your day-to-day life and work with what you value most. You are capable of that. And there's a level of honesty that's required to call you know what on yourself. I had to call you know what on myself because I was so busy doing things that didn't matter. I was so busy chasing the next speech or the next this or the next that or the next other thing, when really what I craved and what my value was to be more strategic in how I was spending my time, to leverage up my business so that it had a better business model, to prioritize time with friends and with my family over constantly saying yes, because that's what I that's what I was doing. And one of the things that I had to be honest with myself about is that somewhere along the line, I don't know if this has happened to you, I somehow attached being busy and achieving with being worthy of love. That my value was in the busyness until it wasn't. And one of the greatest gifts of the last couple of years, being home with my family and not being able to do keynotes, is it brought my core values to the surface and made me go, I need more of this. And I think it's done the same thing for you. That you've been reflecting a lot on the ways in which you want to level up your business. You want to become more focused and sophisticated and strategic about how you spend your time. You want to stop wasting days, weeks, months on things that don't matter. You want to level up your core experiences every single week in terms of who you're spending time with and what you're achieving in your life. That all of this, by the way, is possible. You're capable of all of this, but you've got to be honest with yourself that there are some changes that you need to make. Because what I always tell you, no one's coming. No one's going to do this for you. Nobody is going to figure out what your values are. No one is going to chip away at aligning your life. And I love what Denise just admitted. I've been busy in my own mind to the point of doing nothing because I think I'm too busy, when if I actually look at the time to do things, I would be so much happier. It's so true. We get so addicted to being busy up here that we just churn through time that we could be using to take the actions to pivot our life in a direction that makes us feel more fulfilled. And that's why I always say, I believe in you. Of course you can make changes in your life. Of course you can go back to school. Of course you could triple your business this year. Of course you could become excellent at marketing what you're doing. Of course you can write that manuscript or start that podcast or start that YouTube channel. For crying out loud, if Mel Robbins, a 54-year-old woman, can do all this stuff with no prior experience, you can figure this out. If you're willing to put in the time, if you're willing to be honest with yourself about what you're not doing, about what you're putting up with, about the excuses that you're making for other people who are not showing up. There's somebody in my life that I am like really about right now, because the behavior that they are explaining away in how somebody is treating them. I'm like, do you realize you're being gaslit? And here's the thing about life, everybody. You got to be honest with yourself and know that you can't save other people. That when you try to rescue or save other people, you rob them of the discomfort and the breakdown and the upset that they need in order to have that wake-up moment. Like, it wasn't pleasant for me to have a massive breakdown 2 years ago and realize that my life was not aligned with what I actually value. That's a level of honesty that's painful with yourself. And then once you tell yourself the truth that I got changes I need to make. I am tired of wasting time every evening scrolling through Instagram or just mindlessly looking for a new series to numb me out from a life that I don't really like anymore, because I'm not actually spending time on things that I value. That's a level of honesty that you got to demand of yourself. If you're sitting around looking at all your competitors in business and you're jealous and judgy and you're wondering why and you're telling yourself all these excuses and you're spending all this energy telling yourself you're too late or this or that, or you do not have the resources they have, or you're never going to be famous, you're never going to be this. That used to be me too. I used to look around at everybody else who had a best podcast or a New York Times this or a speaking that or a designer this or whatever and tell myself all the reasons. And then I had to be honest with myself. Mel, you're not doing anything to make those things happen. Your values right now are around complaining. That's not what you value, woman. And for those of you that are like, I feel so lost, Mel, I don't even know what I value. I got the greatest tip from Dr. Luana Marquez, professor at Harvard, who I just interviewed. Lean into the struggle. What is painful about your life? And then ask yourself, do that business exercise, the 5 whys. Why do you not like your life right now? I'll tell you what my answers were 2 years ago. Because I'm lonely. Because I'm tired of just chasing the next thing. Because I feel disconnected from my husband. Because I'm exhausted and I'm always on the road. Because I am busy making excuses instead of taking the bold moves and launching myself in a new direction. Because I'm scared, because I'm used to operating at this level, and so I'm literally arguing to stay here. When are you going to be honest with yourself? That you're the one that's not actually doing the work, and the work I'm talking about is get laser clear about what you value right now. You have changed in the last year. These last 3 years have changed you. And it is time to get honest about it. And it's time to make the moves that align your actions with what you do next. You can launch anything when you are honest with yourself. And it's funny, I keep saying somebody go, I have a headache. I'll tell you why you have a headache. You know what a headache is? You know what struggle is? You know what feeling stuck is? It's when you're lying to yourself and it's bubbling up to here. You're making so many excuses. You're containing all of this potential inside you and you're just tolerating the discomfort instead of changing. What are you doing? Aren't you tired of having low expectations for yourself? Aren't you tired of the excuses that you've created? I know I was just so sick and tired of my excuses. I was so sick and tired of living a life that wasn't in sync with what I actually wanted and cared about. And having that moment of honesty that you want more and you are about to work for it. And I see this thing here from Michael. I know my values, Mel, but it's difficult to manage all my projects and finding a balance between work and private life. Perhaps I'd leave some project apart, but which one? They are all concerning my values. No, they're not. No, they're not. Holding on to something and struggling through it is a sign that there is something about the way that you're doing it that's not aligned with your values. And what I realized is one of the things that I valued was artistry and deeper work and excellence. And I had gotten so freaking busy because there were so many projects going on that I didn't feel like I was operating with excellence and strategy in any of it. I was like one of those ducks that you guys see Mel Robbins going like this, and under the water I'm like, ah! And that's not how that's not what I value. Not at all. And so there is something underneath this. There is a higher personal value or professional value that you need to hold above all the others. You can have a number of values, everyone. and have your life and your values work together. I'll give you an example. So when I got very serious about making an impact, and I got very serious about a deeper connection with Chris and more time with family and friends and creating space and room for passion projects, like I'm starting a cutting garden this year, something I've always wanted to do. I love flowers, and I want to actually grow certain varieties of flowers in a cutting garden. And look, this is my thing, doesn't have to be your thing. When I value beauty and connection and making an impact and still being really ambitious, what's interesting is I can make all those values work when I say, oh, well, here's how I'm going to do that. I don't ever accept work for anybody on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. I don't travel on Mondays. I don't travel on Fridays. Those are ways that I can make the values that I care about work together. And for you, there are projects on your plate that no longer are part of this equation, everybody. But this requires you to be honest with yourself. Honest that the way that you've been doing life, there are parts of it that don't work anymore, and nobody's coming to fix it but you. And I really want you to get clear about what you value. And I believe that you can create a better life, and you're going to create a better life when you get clear about what you value, and then you do the work to shift your life and launch it in a direction that aligns with what you actually value. Now, I see somebody saying, I'm working 7 days a week cleaning houses and offices. I'm scared of telling my clients I can't do it anymore. Well, you've got a couple choices. Figure out what your values are. And if part of it is keeping your current client base, figure out how to hire somebody. Figure out a different business model. That's what I did. And here's what I also want to tell you. It doesn't happen like that. You can figure out what you actually value like that. Turn towards your pain. This is what I learned from Dr. Luana Marquez, professor at Harvard, best-selling author. Her new book is Bold Moves. Or turn toward the things that you just love, that are effortless. And your values are in there. And then go back to your current business or your current life and look at it through the lens of your values. That's where your answers are. See, we get so caught up in our emotions and in our patterns of thinking, and we get so reactive that we're not making strategic decisions. We're letting our emotions drive everything. And if you ever want to level up your experience of life, or level up the business that you want to launch, or the passion project that you want to do, or the project that means everything to you, it's what you value the most, but you never find the time for it. You're just paying lip service to it, which is why you're lying to yourself. And this is a moment of honesty, everybody. This is a moment where you got to tell yourself the truth, that you deserve more and you're willing to work for it. I want to share a story with you. So this past week, I was doing college tours with our son, Oakley, who is a junior in high school. And it was a really interesting experience because as we would be touring colleges and we'd be in these big groups, you know, with parents and kids, and you're going on these tours, Oakley would turn around and, you know, he was walking in front of me and he'd turn around and he'd go, "What do you think? What do you think?" He's looking for my opinion about the school we're turning. And I would say to him, "Dude, it doesn't matter what I think, because I'm not the one going to school here. What do you think? What do you think?" And over the course of the week, it was really interesting because I started to notice how quickly Oakley could assess whether or not he could see or feel himself at that school, right? And he was starting to trust what his life and his energy and his inner compass was telling him. In fact, by the end of the week, we went to one orientation and we were there for 5 minutes, and Oak kind of nudged me and he was like, hard no, hard no. And so we finished the orientation and we left because we weren't going to waste our time on the tour. And Oak said to me, "You know, I didn't like that school at all. It was not at all for me, but I'll tell you what I did like about them. They separated the parents from the students when they took them off on the tours right now. And that's the first school that's done that." And he said, it made me realize how much, Mom, I've been looking at you and Dad and everybody else around me for some sort of direction and approval for the decision that I know deep in my gut is the one that I need to make. And so what I'm here to tell you today is that your life is waiting for you to trust fall into it. Your life will change the moment you have this wake up and you realize that you've got everything you need right in here. You just have to start to tune out your parents. It doesn't matter what Mel Robbins thinks. It doesn't matter what your parents think. It doesn't matter what your spouse thinks. You know what is right for you. You really do. So you got to lean into it. You got to start trusting yourself. That's an act of courage. And it's also a moment when you take control. And ultimately, that's what I want you to do. I want you to take control of your life. I want you to take control of your decisions. I want you to tune out everybody else on this tour that you're walking on right now. Like, think about the fact that right now, as you're going through your life, you're surrounded by other people, just like Oakley was surrounded by other people on this tour. But you're the one that has to be able to hear what your wisdom is telling you. And you're also the one that has to have the courage to just fall in to what you know is right for you. And it's a really simple story, this story about Oakley, but it's an important thing to consider. Because I think we all know when you go and you look at colleges or university or secondary school or a master's program or a technical institution, right? You are making a conscious decision to change your life. You are making a conscious decision to take control of what happens next. And you are allowing yourself to step into the future as you are touring a college or touring a technical school or considering your options. You are allowing yourself to fully step into the what if, to allow your life to just embrace you with open arms, and for you to try on that decision and actually attune it to what feels right for you. And it's not something that we do often as adults, that we make decision. And so what I want you to do, and I see a lot of you really resonating with this story. I just knew what the right school was for me. My daughter thought she wanted to be somewhere else, but I knew she was supposed to be somewhere and it was the right decision. What I want you to take away from this is that your life has something magical that you and only you can discover. And the only way that you're going to discover what your life has in store for you is when you find the courage to start making decisions that feel right for you. Instead of consulting everybody else, instead of worrying about what everybody else. I mean, wouldn't you love to not waste another year of your life? Wouldn't you love to stop wasting time over analyzing everything? Wouldn't you love to finally just get on with it and take control of what happens next, your destiny, your magic? You know, one of the reasons why I think a lot of us feel so tight in our chest and we breathe so shallow is we keep everything we want trapped in here. And when you trust fall into your life, and when you lean into your decisions, and when you tap into greater courage, you release all of that truth, all of that self-expression that you've been holding in. Like that moment on the college tour where Oakley turned and was like, "What do you think, Mom?" Looking for my opinion, looking for what I believed. That's not how you're going to unlock the magic for you. You got to tune that tendency out, and you got to fall into your own instincts. And I see a bunch of going, but how do I gain the trust back? How do I do that? I can teach you how to do that, no problem. In fact, I do want to teach you how to do that because it's a skill to learn how to first hear what your instincts are telling you. And then it's an act of courage to lean into it.
So let's talk about loving you, the you of you, and how that is such a diversion from what you've been practicing doing yourself.
Oh, that's so true. Oh my God. You know, it's so funny because here I invent this thing called the 5-second rule out of dumb luck, drunk on bourbon. I literally share it by mistake on a TEDx stage. And I invented this thing to help me get out of bed during the worst moment of my life and finally face the issues that my husband and I had gotten ourselves into. It spreads around the world. I use the 5-second rule to build a business, to be productive, to, do. But it wasn't until I discovered the high five habit that I actually understood how deeply I had been betting against myself, how every step of the way I had been criticizing myself or focusing on what was going wrong, that when I stood in front of the mirror, Kathy, I did not see a successful woman. I did not see somebody that was, out there making a huge difference. I saw what was wrong with me. I think for the last 45 years, I've either criticized or ignored the woman I saw staring back at me in the mirror. And so like the high five habit, I'm sorry, I just kept barging along. Is there something you wanted to?
No, I'm just taking it in. You're right where you need to be. Keep going.
And so, the high five habit, it did not begin like some big business strategy. I didn't go, okay, I had the 5-second rule. I need to write a book about the 5, something. What is it? Like, let's manufacture something. Oh, Atomic Habits is good. Let's get a habit book. Like, that's not what happened, because that's not my brand of self-help. My brand of personal development and empowerment is hit rock bottom, have a challenging moment, resist change, and then come up with something that sounds so stupid and so ridiculous that it couldn't possibly be something that would actually work. And then when it actually starts working, not only for you, but people who follow you, you better fucking figure out how this thing works, Matt. Like, why is this working? And so the high five habit's no different. I have been trying to write a book, Kathy, for 5 years. The 5-second rule was self-published 5 years ago. I have dyslexia and ADHD. I can create an audiobook like in a day.
Yeah.
Writing something, forget about it. I bet I have written 7 books in the last 5 years. Yeah. All of them sucked. And what happened for me, this is not a pandemic book, but what happened for me, because we're all sick of hearing about the pandemic, but what happened for me is, when the COVID hit, we all have that moment. Like, I'm sure you remember the moment you knew, oh my God, like this is changing everything.
Yeah.
What was it for you?
When they said 2 weeks, the kids would be off school. And then they said, no, it's going to be a month. And I had that feeling of like things closing in and the claustrophobia, like, how will I be able to exist now with us not being able to go out to even a park? What if this would stay this way? Yeah, it was right then. I couldn't believe they were like closing school.
Yeah.
Months.
Yeah. For me, it was a Wednesday in March in 2020. And we were taping this talk show. It was my dream to be a daytime talk show host. And at the age of 51, I got the opportunity to do it. And so we had shot 167 shows at the CBS Broadcast Center. And all of a sudden, somebody comes into the studio space and says they found COVID in the building and you need to evacuate. You got to be out of here in 5 minutes. The fire trucks are outside. And like that, show canceled, fired from my dream job. Didn't get to say goodbye to the 130 people that I had been working with for over a year.
It is so painful.
But hey, everything is preparing you for something. Everything. And so I get into my car and I'm driving home, and I realized as the New York City skyline was disappearing, and my daughter was in Spain, and she called and said, I just heard the news that they're shutting down the borders. I need to get you got to get me out of here. And then I hung up with her, and all of a sudden it was my daughter in California. USC is shutting down, Mom. What is it? What's happening? What's going on? And I thought, oh my God, what is about to happen? And so in a matter of 2 weeks, my a book contract that I had got canceled and they wanted the money back. Every speech I had booked for more than a year started canceling. And that was the beginning.
The kids come home, they're in a state of turmoil. We all experienced it, right? And I think for those first 3 weeks, it was like a complete blur. I basically never got out of my pajamas. I started drinking Bloody Marys at about 11 a.m. We watched Harry Potter marathons and Glee. We watched that season, like all of it. And then all of a sudden, one morning, I woke up and I just felt the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
I woke up and I started feeling a couple things. I felt, do I need to reinvent myself again?
Oh my God.
And then I thought, am I about to lose all my money again? And I'm like, I'm too old for this shit. I've worked too hard. Like you go into that like mode where like, why is this happening to me? I'm a good person. I've worked so hard. Like you like kind of go at yourself. And so I'm thinking this and I'm like, okay, get up, just get up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I get up. I make my bed. I always make my bed. And then I drag myself to the bathroom and I start brushing my teeth. And as I'm brushing my teeth, Kathy, I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And I think, oh my God, you look like hell. And the gray hair is coming in and there's dark circles under my eyes and my neck is all saggy and one boob is hanging lower than the other. And I felt sorry for the woman I saw in the mirror. She looked exhausted. She looked scared. She looked overwhelmed. And as soon as you start to go down a negative path in your mind, it will continue taking you there. And so I immediately drift to everything I'm worried about. I'm worried about my parents. I'm worried about the world. I'm worried about frontline workers. I'm worried about COVID. I'm worried about my kids. I'm worried about my employees. I'm worried about what's going to happen to my business. I'm worried about everything. And the interesting thing in that moment is if you had walked in, I would have been able to pivot on a dime, especially we women. That's what we do. I would have been like, Kathy, don't you dare. Don't you dare. I know this isn't fair. I know you don't deserve. If anybody can handle this, Kathy, you can. You're going to pick your ass up. You're going to pull on your big girl panties and you are going to get your ass back out there, right?
Yeah.
You can do that for anybody else. But there I was without a bra on, my attitude in the gutter, overwhelmed by my life, stressed out, no energy, last on my list, an impossible amount of shit to deal with, just defeated. And I couldn't think of a damn thing to say to myself. And, you know, the other thing is I probably wouldn't have believed it anyway.
Right.
But for whatever reason, as cheesy as it sounds, I literally raised my hand and gave the woman I saw in a mirror a high five because she needed it. And, you know, it wasn't like lightning struck, but something shifted in me. You know, I felt my shoulders drop. I felt my chin lift. I laughed because it's so dumb standing there high-fiving yourself in your underwear. My God. And it's interesting because I also felt like, okay, you know, come on now, Mel, don't be so dramatic. You can handle this. And I left the bathroom. Now, it was the second morning that something really clicked with me because I woke up again, all the same problems, all the same overwhelm. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I get out of bed. I make the bed. I drag myself into the bathroom. And right as I was getting to the bathroom, that's when I felt something I've actually never felt before in my entire life. And that is this. You know, when you are about to go see somebody you really like, and you're going to meet them for a cup of coffee or like a glass of wine or whatever, and you're about to enter the cafe. What do you feel, Kathy, as you're about to see somebody you like?
You're excited and there's like this anticipation. And so you're already feeling good vibes because you know what that person's like and being in their energy. Yeah.
Totally. That's exactly how I felt sitting in your Zoom room. Like, let me in, Kathy, let's go. Come on. I can't wait to see you and meet you. I actually felt that about seeing myself. I have never felt that in my entire life. I have never been excited to see the human being Mel Robbins. I have been excited to see my outfit. I've been excited to see if the eyeshadow looks good. I have never looked forward to seeing myself, the human. And so I walk in and I'm a little bit more present this morning. And I'm brushing my teeth and I put my toothbrush down and I take a moment. And I really look at myself. And I don't even see my face. I see a human being. What's coming up for you?
I mean, that's just so beautiful. Like what you just said, we think about that when we're about to go see our friend or, you know, the other mom who her daughter's in your daughter's class. And there's like an excitement, like you feel like this is like a gift to spend time with this person, but you had never thought about that. And I just think about the women and the men who I've met in my life, the people who listen to this show who they're so good, Mel, and they're so wired to achieve, but they're only as good as like their last achievement. Mm. So there is nothing other than like, well, what's my big post today on Facebook for everyone to see that I earned it. I earned it today. But like inherently, like me just being me, no, I've never heard anyone say like, what a gift to get to be in that person's energy, my own energy today with myself, to see myself.
Yeah. It's everything. And so, you know, I sat and I looked at the woman I saw in the mirror and I thought to myself, well, who does she need me to be today? And what game in life matters to her? And how could I actually just like move the ball down the field today? And so I thought about it. And I thought in that moment, based on what was going on, that who she needed me to be was more optimistic about our ability to get through this. And the game that I wanted to play was showing up in a different way for our kids, because they were looking at Chris and I about what was happening in the world.
Yeah.
And so I raised my hand and I like high-fived my reflection. And so there's a couple things that I just want to explain first about when, you know, you do this, because the beauty of this habit, and this is just the first habit in the book, and we're going to talk about it. And trust me, we are going to get down to the achievement stuff next, because it's really important part of why everybody resists high-fiving themselves and why they feel that it's weird. And I'm going to unpack that in a very methodical way, because thematically, when you feel that this is weird or you resist giving yourself this support and celebration, what's contained in the resistance is the key to understanding why you don't have what you want. And it's also the key to unlocking the cage that you're trapped in.
Oh, that's so juicy.
Talk to me a little bit about, you know, kind of what you've learned in terms of how we keep ourselves locked in. In these
this
cycles.
Is incredible. It's incredible. So the morning that I discovered this thing, I'll kind of unpack this, because the first morning and the second morning, I know that you're going to take this like, boom, even deeper. So here we go, everybody, buckle up. So it's April 2020. And, you know, I can't use my normal coping mechanisms. We're all in quarantine. So as I lose my dream job and my kids' college experience implode and they're grieving and upset and sad, and I'm terrified for I'm, you know, scared for everybody and the frontline workers, and life is upside down and the anxiety starts to kind of roll back in. I can't run to Target. I can't go to the coffee shop. I can't distract myself by running to do a speech. I can't go see my friends. All of the busyness, by the way, which I now can see was a form of self-regulating stress and trauma. That if I'm on the run, I don't have to deal with the woman in the mirror. If I'm moving and the adrenaline is pumping, I don't actually have to sit and be with myself. Maybe I can just outrun this stuff. And so and even the genesis of the 5-second rule, the genesis was, if I move fast enough, if I launch myself out of that bed, maybe I won't be there when the anxiety hits. So even that was like a perfect illustration of just push through it, don't deal with it. It's a fast thing that has profound effect, but it doesn't hit the source of what's causing all of the hatred and the tension and the pain in the first place. So I get out of bed, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I make my bed that morning so I don't crawl back into it. I feel exhausted, overwhelmed. We've all felt this before, whether you felt it during the pandemic or you felt it because you lost a job or somebody just says, I don't love you anymore, or you hate how you look. We've all felt this. I'm overwhelmed by my life. I'm exhausted. I can't face this. I get into the bathroom. I start brushing my teeth, and I immediately catch a glimpse of myself, and I think, oh my God, you look like hell. And then the habit starts that I really want us to unpack. Because every single human being I'm discovering has a habit that is so destructive and none of us are talking about because it's so subtle and it is so hard baked into your mind. And it's this. Every morning in the bathroom mirror, you either ignore yourself, which is a form of rejection, or you pick yourself apart and see all the things you need to fix or what you don't like. And this isn't, this is everybody. 50% of people are uncomfortable or will not look at themselves in the mirror.
I'll admit, I raised my hand. Took me a very long time to really, truly, and there's still discomfort there, of looking at myself. And I used to tell myself, well, it's okay. I know how I feel in my body, and that's my marker. I feel good today, and that's all I need. I don't need to look at that mirror. Not really understanding that I was in that active avoidance. Something felt very intimate, very vulnerable. Before I even got to then the criticism of myself, it just was for me pure avoidance. I didn't really care. I mean, I would need mirrors if I maybe put some makeup on. And outside of that, me and mirrors, I didn't have a relationship with them at all. Not knowing, again, I told myself the story of why I believed I wasn't looking at them until I dove down and unpacked it and understood that there was a discomfort there and still, like I said, remains for me.
Well, same for me. So I start picking myself apart. I feel my energy going down. And, the interesting thing, as I felt myself just getting so defeated, why'd you get up late? You haven't texted Nicole back. The dog's not walked. Like, I'm just like dragging. And all the research around emotional contagion. So do I. That this emotion and negative space is going to impact your productivity. Like, we know all this, but it's a habit. I've been doing this for 4 decades is how long I've been doing this as part of my morning routine. And so if you had walked in the bathroom that morning, I would have spun on a dime. I'd have been like, Nicole, I know this is terrible. I'm so sorry you're going through this. You don't deserve this. But if anybody can face this, you can. What do you need? I would have lifted you up. I could not think of a thing to say. And here's the thing, I wouldn't have even believed it because it didn't match how I was feeling. And I don't know what came over. I honestly believe it was the universe, the divine source saying, all right, we're ready for this. Because it is so cheesy on its face. I'm literally in my underwear, alone with the dog at my feet, literally having the dark night of the soul. And I lift my hand to my tired reflection because the woman in the mirror needed a high five. And in that moment, lightning didn't strike. It wasn't like the heavens opened and, purple light came in and whoa, that's not what happened. As you know, too, like you kind of have this awakening and then it's like, now what? No, but I felt this like shift and I can explain the science. It's crazy. I felt this shift and the energy wasn't lovely. The energy was more like, oh, come on. I laugh. Oh, Mel, come on. It's like, get out there. You're safe, you're fine. Like I kind of shoved myself. I didn't even think, I didn't say it. It was a shift. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.